these cars on Marketplace going for 1,500 bucks, and you wonder, are they reliable? You know, it's a Toyota, Lexus, whatever. I've owned these cars for almost 10 years, and I know all the problems that they have. So let me tell you all the common problems these cars have, and also how to fix them. All right, we're in my garage now to tell you about problem number one, and that is power steering. This car is notorious for power steering problems. Mainly, the power steering pump is on top of the alternator. See that? Power steering pump, alternator. The power steering pump has two main spots that it leaks from. One of them is the high pressure line. There's actually a pressure bypass valve that is originally on this car that you can get rid of if you get a excessive power steering line like this. The other problem is the actual body of the power steering pump. There is a seal here, an O-ring inside, that starts to leak. You see the alternator is right there below it, and it just leaks onto the alternator, destroying your alternator. I have a video on my channel how to rebuild your power steering pump. That's gonna be up in the corner there. And now on to problem number two. Problem number two, which isn't that big of a problem. The problem is fixing it if you do run into this problem. I don't know if you can see this. That is the starter right there. You can't even see it. The starter is underneath the intake of this engine. I have a video on how to replace it, but it's not that big of a problem. It's just a lot of bolts, especially if your whole entire intake and EGR and everything is intact. It is a much bigger job than for me because I have everything simplified and taken apart. On to number three. Number three is the hydro fan on this engine. So from the factory, the SC400 comes with a hydraulically actuated fan. I've replaced it with electric fans on mine because the hydro fan sucks. In this spot right here, there used to be a hydraulic pump, and all the lines would run here underneath to that cooler that I now use as a power steering cooler, and then they would come back into the fan here. That shit leaks all the time. These are off of a 04 GTO. As you can see, I had to do some trimming. I also have a super radiator. A lot of things can be done to improve the cooling of this car. Number four, I have also removed from my car. This is the idle air control valve, and it gets sticky. This plunger thingy right here gets covered in carbon deposits, and it literally gets stuck inside of here, at which point your car will not start unless you give it gas, or it won't idle, I should say. Simple way around that is to get rid of it completely, and then this is the throttle stop screw. You can screw that down a little bit and push the throttle just slightly open. So on really cold days, it will still not idle well unless you raise the idle even more to like 1,000. Easy way around it is to just, when you start the car, you give it some gas, and then you slowly let go of the gas to try to get it to idle. Number 5, leaky ECU capacitors. This is a huge problem in the SC community, both SC300s and 400s. These capacitors get old. Mine have already been replaced. They get old and they leak and they destroy the whole board of the ECU. So very easy to check. Take off 4 screws here, open up the case, take out 6 screws here, flip over the ECU, and check for any leaks or corrosion or anything. If you see anything wrong, send your ECU out to get it fixed. Next up for the 1UZ, oil leaks. These engines leak like crazy. Here's just a few of the spots that the engine leaks from. We got both of the cams. There's a seal right here that leaks. We got both of the valve covers. In the back of the engine here, you see these little half moon shapes? Those leak. These cam covers, those leak. Front main seal leak. Rear main seal leak. Upper oil pan leak. So the upper oil pan leaks right here, all the way around the whole engine, and also the lower oil pan, which you can't see, but down there behind the subframe. There's just a lot of leaks on this engine. So those are some of the problems that are specific to just the SC400 with the 1UZ. Here are some of the problems that relate to both the SC300 and the SC400. First of all, your interior doesn't look like this. Mine's gutted, but the window regulators and it's right here. This is the window regulator. These fail, and they're a pain in the ass to change because you have to remove the whole glass. All this stuff has to come out. Your door panel, everything. Absolute pain in the ass to change. The cable inside will tangle up. Sometimes the motor just wears out. Terrible thing about these cars.
Next up, door handle clips. You see that little purple clip? That thing breaks all the time. And at that point, you can't open your door from the outside. And to compound that, when that breaks, that little gold rod right there hangs down. And when you try to open your window, it snaps that rod. At that point, you need to replace this entire mechanism, your door lock, actuator, everything. Or if you know how to weld, you can weld it back together. If you're ever rolling your window down and it just sticks 2/3 of the way up, you just can't open it, do not try to open it further. Your window is hitting that rod. Close your window, get home, take your door panel off, and replace that clip.
All right, next step on the SC is the fuel pump ECU. On a stock car, the fuel pump ECU resides right here in this hole. The fuel pump ECU no longer puts out 12 volts to the fuel pump. So what you do is you jump 2 wires together and your fuel pump is always pumping out full power. So basically it's just the fuel pump ECU bypass. Next up on the SC is the wheel well harness. This is notorious for killing SCs for people that don't know. If you lower your SC, there is a wheel well harness in here. Mine doesn't have that anymore because I rewired my whole car. On a stock SC, there's a harness right here. And if you lower your car, the wheel rubs on the harness and destroys the wiring going all the way to the engine bay into the original fuse box. I'll have a video up in the corner there you can check out for how to relocate the harness. It's pretty easy to do. You just unplug 3 plugs from the footwell fuse box, pull it out through the hole in there, bring it around here, and then you just put it back through this hole. And it's long enough, you don't have to cut anything, you don't have to do anything special, just unplug, reroute, plug it back in. And lastly, it's just all sorts of old car stuff. Let me go real quick through all the little things that happen with old cars. My car doesn't have it because I have a carbon hood, but the hood struts wear out, your hood doesn't stay up. Same thing with the trunk. Trunk struts are in there. There's one here, one on the other side. Make sure you replace those so your trunk doesn't hit you in the back of the head. Now that these are approaching 30 years old, the suspension is gone. The control arms on these cars are pretty damn expensive. Luckily, there's a couple new aftermarket brands coming out to help you replace the lower control arms, but these bushings right here, they will for sure, if they've never been replaced, will be completely disintegrated. Same thing with the steering rack bushings. There's 2 here and 1 on the other side. Those are going to be gone. Same thing goes for the rear of the car. Control arm bushings will be gone. Differential bushings will be gone. Differential bushings though, pretty easy to replace with solid aluminum bushings, or polyurethane bushings exist as well. All suspension on old cars is gone. You gotta replace it. I'll throw up an old clip from when we first got this car when it still had an interior, but all the leather can be torn. Mostly the seats, the SC seats, are always torn. Almost always. It's very hard to find a good interior. Other places that tear are the window trims. So there's leather window trims. Those break. The armrest cover breaks. This center vent always cracks. Either the little fins crack or it cracks right here down the middle. Those vents break. There's a vent here that breaks. All the vents break. The screens on the climate control units also leak. These are old LCD screens. They leak out and the screen goes black. The bulbs inside these also burn out just because they're incandescent bulbs. You know they burn out. They're not supposed to last thousands of hours. Very easy to replace. Cut it off, desolder a bunch of pins and solder in a new screen. Same thing with the bulbs. Very easy to replace. Same thing goes for the cluster, which I don't have. All the backlights burn out and the needles burn out. Luckily, I have a video up here to show you guys how to fix that because it's pretty damn easy, but nobody wants to do it. 30 years of grime will build up inside the sunroof drains, which, see, there's one right here. That's the sunroof drain. Usually it's connected to the sunroof right here. Obviously I don't have that anymore, but these drains clog, and what happens is water collects on your floor, soaks your carpet, and then your car molds and stinks. You can basically just follow the pipe, blow some compressed air in there, try to get it cleaned out so your carpet doesn't mold. The heater core valve resides right here on a stock SC. and it controls how much coolant goes into the heater core to heat your interior. What happens sometimes is they get stuck closed so your heat doesn't work. Easy fix is to open it up manually and zip tie it shut or replace it. There's some forum posts about using heater core valves from other cars. You've probably noticed these cars have giant doors, and with giant doors means giant door hinges. These double acting hinges wear out and they sag. And what happens then when they sag, they hit the fender. You see mine? The paint is chipping off here because the door is hitting the fender. Luckily mine, I just need to adjust the fender a little bit. My door is not sagging, but very easy to check. You open the door and you see how much you can lift it. Sometimes these move a lot. That's how you know that door hinge is totally ruined. It's pretty easy to replace. It's just a couple bolts, but remember these doors are huge and they weigh like 100 pounds, so you're gonna need a buddy to help you out with that. Lastly, being an old car, and especially here in the Rust Belt of Chicago, it's gonna rust. So here's some common rust areas on these cars. We'll just start at the front and we'll move our way back. The rear subframe is steel, so there's like two subframes here. So you have the front one here, which holds the suspension, and then in the back, there's another steel one. That one rusts. These fenders rust a bunch, and it also rusts inside the wheel well here. The corners of the roof very commonly rust. When your windshield wipers are cleaning the window, when you're driving, the liquid accumulates right here and rusts these corners all the time. Very common rust area. Quarter panels. See mine? Rusting. So these always rust. So they rust all the way here. Mine, I actually cut out all this metal here because it was completely rotted out. These areas right here rust a bunch on these cars. Rear subframe, same thing. Tends to rust quite a bit. Remember I was talking about the leaky sunroof drains? Those will rust the floor. That's why my floor is 415, and I actually replaced my floor because it was completely rusted out. So floors, very thin metal, tend to rust a little bit. That's gonna wrap up this video. As you can see, old cars have a lot of problems. There's just no way around it. So, are SC400s reliable? I mean, all of these problems I mentioned aren't car breaking. They're all just like little things that will annoy you and kind of ruin your day or your weekend because you're gonna end up working on your car trying to fix it, but nothing is catastrophic. The engines don't fail, the transmissions don't fail. You can just keep driving with a leaky power steering pump and no alternator. You're gonna kill batteries and you're gonna be losing power steering fluid, but you can still drive it, I guess. So technically SC400s are reliable if you're okay with replacing all the parts that are broken or about to break. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you subscribe to get more SC400 content because this car's not going anywhere and it's gonna get a lot more wild after this.
America, do you have your passport? Did you get your chance? Who wants the car?